Week 1 didn't just sting for Ravens fans. It left a scar. You saw flashes of greatness, some moments that screamed potential, but all of it got buried under a brutal collapse in the fourth quarter. And somehow, in the middle of all that chaos, a Bills cornerback decided that was the moment to take a jab at DeAndre Hopkins. Out of nowhere. Completely unnecessary, and honestly, just weird. So let's unpack all of it. The good, the bad, and the absolutely baffling. Let's start with what actually happened out there. The Ravens looked sharp early. The offense was clicking. The run game was slicing through Buffalo like a hot knife through butter, and Lamar Jackson? Efficient, calm, surgical. He finished the game with just 5 incompletions, over 200 yards passing, and 2 touchdowns. No turnovers. You'd think that would be enough to secure a win, and on most days, it would be. But the problem wasn't Lamar. The problem was the same thing that's haunted Baltimore for the past few seasons, collapsing when it matters most. And in the middle of all that, Bills corner Christian Benford made headlines for all the wrong reasons. Now let's be real. What DeAndre Hopkins did on that touchdown catch wasn't just impressive. It was vintage D-Hop. One hand, in stride, with Benford in tight coverage. It was the kind of play that reminds everyone why Hopkins is still one of the most dangerous receivers in the league, even if he's not taking every snap. Lamar dropped a dime. Hopkins went up and got it, and Benford? He ended up on the ground, waving his arms like the play didn't count. The ref disagreed. Touchdown, Baltimore. But here's where things got weird. After the game, Benford gets asked about that catch and says, with a straight face, "Tell him to do it again if we play him again." That's it. No props. No acknowledgement. Just do it again. He even got asked if Hopkins pushed off. Same answer. Tell him to do it again. Like, what are we doing here? You just got mossed by one of the best receivers of this generation, and instead of owning it, you double down with some weird passive-aggressive jab? Come on, man. You're a professional. Tip your cap, say it was a great catch, and move on. Instead, Benford made it personal and gave Hopkins a little bulletin board material for the next time these two teams meet. And let's be honest, they probably will meet again. Ravens-Bills has that energy, that playoff intensity feel. And if they do, you better believe DeAndre Hopkins will remember exactly what was said. Now, speaking of D-Hop, let's talk about the role he played in this game, because it wasn't huge on paper, but it was significant. He played just over a third of the offensive snaps, 18 snaps total. But in those moments, he did exactly what Baltimore brought him in to do, make plays when it counts. That catch in the end zone was the highlight, sure, but his presence alone changes how defenses line up. He's not supposed to be the number 1 guy anymore. That's Zay Flowers. That's Rashad Bateman. Hopkins is there to be a weapon, a veteran, a guy who makes defenses pay when they forget he's on the field. And that's what happened. He only had 2 targets, but he caught both. 35 yards, a touchdown, and a reminder that you better not sleep on him. And honestly, I'd like to see him on the field a little more. 35% of snaps feels light. Somewhere around 50% might be the sweet spot, especially in a game where he clearly still has juice and chemistry with Lamar. But this wasn't just about DeAndre. The offense as a whole, when it wasn't being held back by conservative decisions or questionable late-game management, looked dangerous. Derrick Henry was punishing defenders. Zay Flowers had a career high in yards. Even Rashad Bateman made plays when called upon. The Ravens only threw the ball 19 times, but they made it count. And that was largely because the run game was so dominant early. That dictated the flow. That set the tone. The issue is that once the Bills adjusted, Baltimore didn't. Or maybe they couldn't. And look, if we're going to talk about Lamar, let's be clear. He played a great game. Not just good, great. No mistakes. He was sharp, he was poised, and he did everything you ask of your franchise quarterback. He's not the reason the Ravens lost. Not even close. And for once, finally, people aren't trying to blame him. That's rare, and it says a lot. Because the way this game ended, the blame falls squarely on the coaching staff. On execution. On decision-making. Still, even with that loss, there are a few positives to take away. The chemistry between Lamar and D-Hop is real. Flowers continues to emerge as a star, and the Ravens put 40 points on the board. That should be more than enough to win an NFL game, but it wasn't, because the defense gave up 43. And that's where things get frustrating. But before we get to the defense, one last thing on that Hopkins-Benford exchange. The most surprising part of all this was how mature DeAndre Hopkins was after the game. He wasn't out there throwing shade. He wasn't talking trash. He gave credit to the Bills. He acknowledged the Ravens had things to clean up. He spoke like a leader, like a guy who's been there. Meanwhile, Benford's out there acting like he didn't just get cooked on national television. That's the part one don't get. Be better. It's one thing to get beat on a great play. It happens to every corner at some point. But don't let pride get in the way of accountability. That's the difference between a good team and a great one. And that's something the Ravens, and some of their opponents, are still figuring out. Now, let's keep it moving because there's plenty more to unpack from this game, especially the bizarre decisions on the sideline and how John Harbaugh's comments after the game added even more confusion to a collapse that left fans stunned. So here's the thing. After a loss like that, everybody's emotions are running high. Fans are upset, players are frustrated, and the media wants answers. That's just how it goes. But when John Harbaugh stepped up to the podium after the game and again on Monday, something just felt off. You could tell by the way he answered questions, or kind of danced around them, that he didn't have a grip on what just happened. It was like watching someone try to explain away a collapse that's become way too familiar for this team. He got asked, pretty directly, about the Ravens' track record of blowing double-digit leads, especially in the second half. And instead of owning it, instead of saying, "Yeah, it's a problem. We're going to fix it," Harbaugh basically shrugged it off. He said something along the lines of, "Well, maybe part of the reason it happens is because we've been ahead so often. Come on, that's not the answer. That's like telling someone, 'Well, I only fail because I'm usually doing so well.' It's nonsense. Being up in games isn't the issue. It's blowing those leads that's the issue. And Ravens fans have seen it too many times. And let's be clear here. This isn't an isolated incident. This isn't a one-time thing. We're not talking about a freak loss that came out of nowhere. This has been years in the making. Since 2021, the Ravens have lost games in this exact fashion over and over again. And the one constant in all of it is the guy wearing the headset. That's not just bad luck. That's a pattern, a trend, and fans are sick of it. Now, Harbaugh did eventually admit, that they need to rethink how they approach those late-game moments. He talked about giving more thought to play calling, communication, mindset, and all that. But by the time he got to that point, the damage was done. The first impression was that he just wasn't taking it seriously enough. He wasn't mad enough. He wasn't urgent enough. And that's a big part of why fans are so frustrated. They want to believe that things will change, but how can you believe that when your head coach is giving answers that sound like excuses? Then there was the 4th and 3 decision. The Ravens had a chance to go for it. The game was slipping. Everyone watching could feel it. Lamar was banged up from a brutal hit. You could tell the momentum had flipped. And instead of keeping the offense on the field, they punted. And Harbaugh defended that decision like it was airtight. He talked about win probability, delay of game risks, whether or not they had a play call ready. Everything except the fact that playing not to lose is exactly what keeps getting this team beat. And look, Harbaugh isn't wrong to say that you've got to make those decisions fast. But he's wrong if he thinks that punting in that moment was the right call. You've got a quarterback like Lamar Jackson. You've got Derrick Henry. You've got playmakers. And you're telling me you don't trust your offense to get 3 yards? In a game where your defense had just given up back-to-back touchdown drives? That's what people are mad about. It's not just that they lost. It's how they lost. And it's how predictable the loss felt. Now, the other part of this is how Harbaugh talked about individual players. When asked about Kyle Hamilton and that ridiculous pitchback after the interception, which could have ended in a disaster, he basically roasted him. Joking or not, Harbaugh said he questioned whether Hamilton actually graduated from Notre Dame. Like, that's a rough way to go about it. Even if it was dumb, and yeah, it was, throwing your young safety under the bus like that publicly doesn't sit right. That's a locker room leader. That's one of your stars. And he made a mistake in the moment, sure, but so did a whole bunch of people on that field and sideline. Then there's Keaton Mitchell. Harbaugh was asked about why he was inactive and basically said, "Well, we just didn't have snaps for him. That's it." He said the number of offensive snaps for Keaton would be limited, and based on the numbers, it looks like he might be a healthy scratch for a good chunk of the year. That doesn't make sense when you think about how much this team talked about his speed and what he could bring to the offense. But again, it feels like another case of this coaching staff sticking too close to the script, being too conservative, and missing opportunities to be aggressive and creative. So when you stack it all together, The blown lead, the lack of urgency, the strange comments, the refusal to take real accountability. It paints a pretty clear picture. This coaching staff is either out of answers or just not willing to admit that it needs to change its approach. And here's the kicker. The Ravens talked all offseason about how things would be different. The players said it. The coaches said it. They talked about new mindset, new execution, learning from the past. And then the very first game of the year ends exactly the same way the worst losses of the last few seasons have ended. That's why people are mad. Now, we've got to be fair here. This doesn't mean the season is over. It doesn't mean the Ravens are doomed. There are 16 games left. This is still a talented roster. They have a quarterback who can win you games. They have a defense that has shown it can dominate for stretches. They've got weapons. They've got leadership. But if the people in charge don't start making better decisions and adapting when it matters most, none of that will matter. And honestly, it's not just Ravens fans who are pointing fingers. The national media is starting to turn on John Harbaugh too. That's how big this collapse was. Usually, when Baltimore loses, there's someone else to blame. A missed kick, a turnover, a blown assignment. But this time, it's all coaching. Everyone sees it, and the pressure is building. This might be Harbaugh's last shot. With Greg Roman gone, with a new offensive coordinator, with a revamped roster, the excuses are gone. If the same problems keep happening, it's not about the personnel anymore. It's about leadership. And if things don't change fast, the organization is going to have to make a real decision. Because here's the truth. A team this talented should not be blowing leads like this. A team with Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, DeAndre Hopkins, and Roquan Smith should be putting teams away, not letting them hang around until the final whistle. But that's exactly what happened. Again, now they've got to prove they can bounce back. And with Cleveland coming up in week 2, there's no time to feel sorry for yourself. Because if they go down 0-2, it's going to be a long, long season. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support keeps us bringing you the latest news on the Baltimore Ravens. And hey, drop your take in the comments below. We want to hear from the flock. The streets around Baltimore's football cathedral are buzzing with a rumor that refuses to go away. Marcus Williams, the defensive star whose name has been linked to highlight reels and locker room whispers alike, may be on the verge of stepping into purple and black. Sources close to the situation won't go on record, but the talk in league circles suggests the Ravens are preparing something big, and Williams could be the centerpiece. The mood in Baltimore is almost celebratory, as though the deal were already sealed. Fans on social media are swapping edits of Williams in a Ravens jersey, while local radio stations can't go a single hour without circling back to the same question. Is this the moment Baltimore makes its defensive unit feared again? For years, the Ravens have prided themselves on their tradition of hard-hitting, game-changing defenders, from Ray Lewis to Ed Reed. Williams, with his speed, instincts, and knack for reading quarterbacks, feels like the natural heir to that legacy. Some insiders claim that the Ravens front office has been working behind closed doors for weeks, maneuvering quietly, waiting for the right moment to strike. Others insist it's nothing more than smoke, that the team is simply testing the waters. Still, the sense of inevitability hangs in the air. After all, the Ravens have been desperate to add consistency to their secondary, and Williams fits that mold perfectly. Young enough to anchor the unit for years, experienced enough to step in as a leader from day one. As for Williams himself, he has remained silent, offering no clues, no cryptic tweets, no interviews. That silence has only fueled speculation further. Could it be that the quiet speaks louder than words? Could Baltimore already be preparing the stage for a grand unveiling, one that would send shockwaves across the AFC? Nothing is official, not yet. But in Baltimore, the party feels ready to start. The rumor of Marcus Williams to the Ravens may be just that, a rumor. Still, if the whispers prove true, the Ravens' defense could once again become the stuff of nightmares. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay in the loop with exclusive news on our Baltimore Ravens, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what the flock thinks. Drop your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.